Unsyndicated presents What the Puck with Sean Baligian.
So what is up? So glad you can join us. I just figured, we're not having the watch party tonight, but a lot of you guys are just like me. I can't wait for the game to start. So we figured, you know what? Why don't we just have a chat about what we've seen so far and about what we might see tonight and beyond. Of course, I'm Sean. So glad you can join us. Game number 3. And I'm really intrigued, guys, to see how much carryover there is tonight. I really am, because in my opinion, and you guys tell me if you feel the same way, I think that the Florida Panthers are going to strike back tonight. I really do. I think they're going to strike back tonight. And what I mean by that, of course, is this. When asked about the hit, and everybody knows what we're talking about, Draisaitl's hit on Barkov. When asked about the hit after the game, Tkachuk basically came out and said, "No, I'm not going to talk about that." When Maurice was asked about it, he made the quirky line. I don't remember exactly what the quote was, but he made the quirky line about my feelings don't matter. This is not the Oprah Winfrey show. And the suggestion that maybe, just maybe, Draisaitl and McDavid should keep their heads up. Now, I'm a firm believer in time and place. I don't think, that they're going to goon it up. This is not going to be a flashback to when guys like me were growing up. The pound of flesh, we're going to go get them. You knew if something happened in the home and home series, you knew if something happened on a Friday, you were going to have to answer the bell on Saturday. I'm not going down that road. I have a feeling for the first time this series, and at least I've been consistent about this, I have a feeling for the first time this series, you're going to see the Florida Panthers play a 60-minute game where they look like the Florida Panthers. And that's the most frightening thing right now from an Edmonton Oiler kind of viewpoint. Florida hasn't played their A game yet. I thought in game 2, you saw moments of it, where they took over and they played quote unquote Florida Panther hockey. But I don't think that they brought their A game yet. I think you're going to see that tonight. And I know a lot of people, I was just talking to my buddy Mike, who unfortunately couldn't be with us. I see my buddy Hubie in the chat. He will be with us on Saturday. Boy, I'm going to have to tell you about what we're doing on Saturday. We're going to have like a watch party. Thursday night, there were just too many things going on for too many people. So unfortunately, could not do that tonight. But Saturday, I'll tell you what we're going to do on Saturday. Hubie said, intrigued to see if any of the Oilers show up besides McDavid. Also, what adjustments the Oilers do on their power play. It seems the passes aren't there. This is the crazy thing, and this is why I keep going back to this. This is almost like a replay of what we saw last year. The Florida Panthers that we saw in the first 3 rounds last year disappeared in the final. Now, a lot of that has to do, I don't want to take anything away from Vegas. Vegas just rolled those big lines and just kind of rolled over them, and they weren't exactly healthy, to put it mildly, the Florida Panthers. But that's what you saw. And the Edmonton Oilers that we're seeing right now, it's not the Edmonton Oilers that we saw in the previous 3 rounds. In particular, that 3rd round against Dallas, when that power play just went out of this world. All of a sudden, the things that were working and the things that we were talking about, Hubie brings up a great point. It isn't there. And the power play isn't clicking. And I'm going to say this again. I know I said it after game 1, and I'll even say it after game 2. Certainly was a better performance from Florida, but that wasn't a Florida Panther type of game. I mean, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think they've brought their A game yet. And that should scare the crap out of you. But I was talking to Mike just a few minutes ago, and Mike said, if they can survive the first 10 minutes, look out. Well, that's what intrigues me about this game. Because, of course, a lot of people are going to sit back. Edmonton, the crowd's going to be nuts. They're going to come out flying. I think because of what happened with Barkov and Draisaitl, I think Florida's going to come out flying too. We could be in for a treat the first 10 minutes of the game. And again, I don't want to say we're going back down the Bruise Brothers and this is going to be like the Good Friday Massacre and we're going to be talking about this for years. No, it's not like that anymore. We all know that, okay? So put it in its proper perspective. I think you're going to see a level of tenacity. I think you're going to see a level of sandpaper and grit that we really haven't seen for 60 minutes from the Florida Panthers so far, just by their reaction. Now, can we get to the hit itself? And I'm glad that Hubie's here because he's one of the guys we often will text each other during games and stuff like that. It's kind of funny when things like this happen in the National Hockey League, all right? You have, especially now that we are, in the social media age, you have a group of people that come out immediately, and they're usually rooting for, in this case, the Edmonton Oilers. Clean hit, clean hit, clean hit. There was nothing clean about that hit. Like, stop it. There was nothing clean about that hit. If you're such a homer that you can't differentiate that and clean hit, I can't help you. There was absolutely nothing clean about that hit. Guys, left the skate, delivered. Here comes NHL, safety quote. Principal point of contact was the head, in this case, the jaw, and he delivered it with an elbow. There's nothing clean about that play. Nothing whatsoever, okay? Now, is it worth 5? Is it worth a suspension? I didn't think he was going to be suspended. I just didn't. I did not think he was going to be suspended. Not this time of year. And of course, if you follow NHL logic, if Barkov was out, then all bets are off. I mean, that's just the way they operate. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's never made sense to me. I've gone on rants about that forever and a day. Wait a second. So 2 guys can do pretty much the exact same hit, and one guy gets suspended because the player he hit misses 2-3 games, and the other guy doesn't get suspended because he didn't? I've never understood that logic, but I think especially even though they made the announcement before we knew that Barkov was going to be back, and yes, for what it's worth, Elliot Friedman said that Barkov and Tarasenko were going to be good to go tonight, according to Paul Maurice. There was no possible way. There was no possible way that they were going to suspend that. Dave said if Bob is Bob tonight, the Oilers are squeezing their sticks, and that will be the end of the series. That's what I expect, Dave. Like, I'm going to stick with 5. I am. I'm going to stick with 5. Maybe Edmonton comes back in game 4 and holds serve on home ice just to, delay the inevitable. Conversely, I like Florida a lot more because of the events from game 2 and just the way that they handled it. And you could see it in their eyes when they talked about it. Like, anybody who's followed hockey, you're like, "Ooh, I've seen that look before." That was like a team that, with that resolute determination on their face. And so that's the way that I'm looking ahead to game 3 tonight. I think we're in for a dandy first 10 minutes. I really am. Ray said, I've seen a lot of people compare that to Bennett on Marchand. And hit to the jaw. I mean, we know what happened. And clearly that was a situation where he had to go in protocol. So, again, when you're talking about the logic of the NHL, to do it this time of year, my jaw would have dropped. Honestly, my jaw would have dropped if they suspended him. So even before we knew he was coming back, the league safety board basically said, nope, we're not going to add anything to it via fine or suspension. But both things can be true. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. But at the same time, don't call it a clean hit. Like, knock it off. There was nothing clean about that hit. That's why it was penalized. If you even wanted to argue that you could have given him a nickel for that, I would have listened to that argument. I don't know. Paul said Oil squeezes one out at home, but Florida, after last year, is on a mission. Paul, I couldn't agree with you more. I just they're healthy, which they weren't last year. They got to that big stage last year and just looked overwhelmed. They really did. If you think of that final last year, at least that was my opinion, they looked overwhelmed last year. And this is a situation this year. They're healthy. They're the favorite, and they're playing like a favorite. And as Dave brought up, uh, Bob is having Bob moments, but he's not letting in Bob goals. And I think there's a big difference there. And David, I know you know a little something about goaltending and squeezing the stick. When you start to see those shots miss to the left, to the right, a foot high, 2 feet high, when you start to see that, you know you're in trouble. You know you're in trouble because guys are thinking, they start aiming, they stop shooting, they start aiming. You see it time and time again when a guy starts to get up in their head. And I think Bob's up in their head right now. I'm going to be intrigued. I said Florida. I'm going to stick with Florida in 5. But boy, oh boy, all bets are off if Florida comes out and does what I think they're going to do tonight. And that's take care of business tonight to go up 3-0 in this series. So glad you can join us. The gang is not here. The gang will be here on Saturday. So what I know is my buddy Mike, the Oiler fan, will be here. The coach will be here. Hubie will be here. My other Mike, Iviso, will try to join us later. I know he's got a wedding going on. For the record, of course, with it being a Saturday, that means I can prepare all day. Sorry, I had things to do today, so I couldn't prepare like we usually do. But I got a brisket going in, and I got a surprise for the boys. I feel like the Pioneer Woman all over again. So I'm going to do Hubie and Coach, if you're watching, I am going to do a jerk pork butt, mustard base. Put that jerk all over it. That Caribbean jerk all over it, and smoke that bad boy for 12 hours. I can't wait. That good thick bark with that jerk taste to it. I'm down for some jerk pork. So that's what we're going to roll with: some brisket and some Caribbean jerk. Some other points. Jason said, smiley face. Hi, Jason. Jason said, same game parlay tonight of Hyman and Reinhart as anytime goal scorers, and Edmonton with the money line win as a second bet. Ray said Kane is out tonight. That just came down. Oh, the sports hernia. Thank you. See, this is why I'm glad that you guys are informing me this. You guys are informing me of this. We talked about it last round, and we obviously talked about it early in this series, and give the young man credit. Okay. Darnell Nurse has struggled defensively. Okay. He got better during the Dallas series. And I've always said in this business, it's so funny, people get pissed off left and right. If a guy's doing well, you have to say he's doing well. If a guy's doing poorly, you have to say he's doing poorly. If a guy has improved, which I think you saw Edmonton as a whole improve as that Dallas series went on, you have to give him credit as such. And I think Skinner, the circumstances fall with him. It is amazing how bad Darnell Nurse has been over this run. And with it being the Stanley Cup final, you have memes and stats and breakdowns every single possible way. And everybody has seen that, including Darnell Nurse. I really have to wonder where he's at mentally right now. And that's just a huge factor. And another thing you have to wonder, and we were all talking about this going back to last game, Evan Bouchard has had a phenomenal playoff. Okay? Make no mistake about that. But if you want a perfect example of a team that ran a guy into the ground, go watch game 2. Dude was on the ice constantly. And that giveaway that he coughed up, it looked like a pass, right? To put Florida up 3-1. Just a bad look. And I'm going to be intrigued. The extra day could really help Edmonton in this situation, especially, with some of the issues that Florida had even getting out. Tim said, I wish I knew how long it took after 1955 for officials to have different set of rules on suspensions in the playoffs versus the regular season. That was the big thing when we were kids. Remember, you never, ever saw calls in the playoff. I'll never forget, and maybe one of you guys can help me. You know me, I usually remember this stuff off the top of my head, in regards to this series and what year it happened and Conn Smythe trophies. But there was a playoff when I was a kid. I want to say maybe it was the 87 playoff where Andy Van Helleman actually called a penalty in an overtime. And back then it didn't happen. I mean, it just didn't happen. And trust me when I say this, that was a story. That was like really a story. That was a big thing. I want to say it was the 87 playoff and it was Andy Van Helleman that did it. But back then, never happened. Never happened. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of it's a penalty in the first period. It's a penalty in the third period. But consider the source. I'm also a big fan of you guys set the tone. I'm not going to blow my whistle until I absolutely have to blow the whistle. If you guys want to do the shenanigans, we'll go down shenanigan road. Okay? But I'm going to let you guys, especially at this level, there's a reason why both of you are here. Okay? I'm going to let you play. But if you start to take too many liberties, I'm going to start blowing it left and right. I'm a firm believer in that. I think both things can be true. Paul said, that sounds yummy, Sean. I'm crashing in through the back screen porch. All right. That sounds good, Paul. We'll see you there. Ray said, I wish Knobloch would go say the route and play McDavid every other shift, get him going. I think that is something that you're probably going to see more of tonight. Like where it's a different scenario, obviously, with a guy like Connor McDavid and the forwards, because obviously they have shorter shifts. Bouchard played way too much. I think everybody has to acknowledge that. Everybody has to acknowledge that. But you got to find a way to get that guy going. Or could it be Barkov is as good as everybody says? Because he's been a monster story. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you have Wayne Gretzky coming out and saying he's the best defensive forward since Brian Trottier, especially this time of year, boy, oh boy, that tells you all you need to know when you're hearing things like that. Ray said New Jersey and Washington. Was it New Jersey and Washington? That would have been 88, right? They met in 88, round 2, 88. I told you I'm Rain Man with stuff like that because Washington beat Philly in the first round in 88, so that would have been round 2. But trust me, it was a huge story when Andy Van Helleman actually called a penalty in an overtime period. Jim said the one time they should have blown the whistles when Brett Hull was in the crease in the 99 final. It's unbelievable. I still can't. There was no justification for that. They're just, I mean, if you read the rule at the time, and if I remember correctly, I think it was Rule 70B, because that summer I was working at the radio station, and I made it my goal every day in the summer because I was embarrassed as a hockey fan. Yes, kids, at one point in time, there were these things called fax machines. I faxed the NHL every day in the summer of 99. I crap you not, a copy of Rule 70A. Or 70B or whatever it was. But I think it was Rule 70B at the time. I mean, if you read the rule in the NHL rule book, like that's another one of those things. Hubie, I'm glad you brought that up. There's no argument. The guy was in the crease. It's no goal. Like there's no gray area. There's no opinion. Much like we were talking about earlier with the hit. You can say it's clean, but I'm going to say you're wrong. I'm going to say you're a homer. I'm going to say you're an idiot, right? And that was the thing. When I heard the debate, that was a good goal. No, it wasn't. By the NHL's own rule, that's no goal, period. Like, read the rule book, So Tim says, was that the have another donut, you fat pig moment? No, that was Jim Schoenfeld and Don Koharski. That would have been the next round. Bruins Devils played in the conference championship. Wales Conference Championship. So that would have been the next round. So Devils, they went on, then they knocked off Caps in second round, and then they played Boston in the conference finals. That was the famous final with the 4-game sweep in 5 games. Remember the Fog? I love going down memory lane. Do you guys, seriously, do you remember the Fog? Game 4 in Boston, it was a hot day. The cooling system didn't work in Old Boston Garden, and literally fog descended on the ice. So they canceled Game 4 in Boston and just made Game 4 back in Edmonton. And Edmonton concluded with the sweep. So that was it. Ray said they changed the crease the next year because of that goal. Absolutely. But that's what the NHL does. They can't say we were wrong, so instead they just change the rule. NHL logic. Dave says, if Buffalo wins that series, does Hasek ever come to Detroit? Strange how the hockey gods work out. It's a great question. I mean, first of all, obviously they would have to win that game. And then they would have had to go to Dallas and win in Game 7 because that was Game 6 of the 99 finals. But it's a good question. I think, this is the key and operative word, I think that Dom Hasek and the Buffalo Sabres were done. That's just one man's opinion. I think there were too many hard feelings on both sides for a myriad of reasons. There were some crazy rumors out there. If you remember, I was told that they weren't true. I'm not even going to bring them up. I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. But I think too much water had gone under the bridge. Sometimes you get to that point where it's like, nah, we just got to go in different direction. But I guess we'll never know. We will never know. Obviously, your thoughts on tonight and your thoughts on this series moving over. Am I being too hard on Edmonton? Again, consider the source. I picked against them every single round. I really and truly I did. I picked against them against the Kings. If you remember, both Mike and I were watching the Kings like the last month of the season. Man, I wouldn't want to play this team in the first round of the series. And well, you saw what happened. Edmonton took care of them. I thought everybody was underselling Vancouver, even with Vancouver's history and their goaltending issues. I thought everybody was underselling Vancouver. That was a good team that, again, as somebody who stays up late and watches a lot of hockey, I said, man, you're underselling Vancouver. Edmonton found a way in that series. When it looked like Vancouver was going to win that series, Edmonton took over. And then obviously we saw what happened in Dallas. Dallas just plumb ran out of gas. So far, I feel really good about feeling very confident about Florida in this series. And I need to repeat this. Florida hasn't brought their A game, man. They haven't brought their A game. You guys have watched it. You've watched the playoffs. We've seen moments of it. I thought more in Game 2 than certainly in Game 1. And that should be the most frightening aspect of it. Ray said, how much do you think the travel issues will affect Florida tonight? Ray, I said this the last show, and I'm going to say it again. I don't care what anybody says, and you probably are never going to catch a player admitting this with a microphone in front of his face. I've talked to enough players in my life and been on NHL planes a few different times when I was calling games for Carolina. Those guys hate it. It's miserable. Now, I know what the next statement will be. The next statement will inevitably be, well, Edmonton had to do the same thing. Well, not like Florida. Florida's plane couldn't take off. It took a lot longer than they thought because of the storms, where Edmonton was able to blow back home, get the rest, whether they're staying in their own homes, whether they're staying in a hotel. A lot of times teams say, no, we want you to stay in the hotel. It's playoff time. Don't even go home. We're going to stay in the hotel as a team. There's a big difference staying in your bed than sitting there at the airport, sitting on the plane, as luxurious as it is. There's a big difference there. So, yeah, I think, Ray, that's something that you're going to have to take into account tonight. Jason said, my thought is I need Edmonton to win tonight because I have Panthers in 6. Fair enough. Ray said 2011 was the last 0-2 series, which the team down won Boston, Vancouver. Yeah, that was crazy, especially in Game 7, the way that Boston won in Game 7 in Vancouver. Tim said, see parallels between this series and when the Devils swept the Wings. I think in the way that Florida plays, yes. Sometimes it's not the most exciting brand of hockey. I'll be the first guy to admit that. But I think that was a bad take by a lot of Red Wing fans going back to 1995. I do. New Jersey's boring. Oh, that style. Oh, it's bad for the league. All that stuff. If I'm a Devil fan, what the hell do I care? The point is to win the Stanley Cup. I guess when the parade is being held in the parking lot at the Meadowlands or wherever the hell it was, maybe as I'm celebrating and holding my beer, maybe I'll go, rats. I wish my favorite team was more exciting. Like, said nobody. But if you remember that, and it's a lot easier to admit it now that maybe there was some butt hurt involved with the way the Wings were unceremoniously dumped in that 95 final, it makes the pain go away when you go win 4 Stanley Cups after that, obviously in the next 13 years. But if you remember, that take was prevalent for years. Oh, the Devils are bad for hockey. I thought the point was to win. Call me crazy. I thought the point of playing the Stanley Cup playoffs was finding a way to win 4 games in 4 rounds, and the first to 16 is called a champion. What do I know? That was just, but it does lead me. Can I bring this up? And I know I teased this on Facebook. We only have a few minutes here because obviously we all want to go watch the game. Do you know what one quote I can't stand? And I've heard so many people, whether it be a reporter or post-game coverage, use this. You guys know this quote. A series doesn't start until, there's 2 ways to say it. The home team loses or you win a game on the road. What? What do you? So if I take that to its logical conclusion, okay, Florida has home ice. They take care of home ice the whole series. Edmonton takes care of business on their home ice the whole series. After Game 7, the series didn't start yet, even though Florida's skating around with the Stanley Cup. Yes, sometimes it's happened like that. I think we've all seen series where, for whatever reason, the home team takes care of business in games 1 and 2. The road team comes back in games 3 and 4. Then the home team says, oh, no, game 5, this is our barn. And then the road team says, oh, yeah, game 6, we're going back to our barn. And there's no way in 80s we're going to be eliminated on our own barn. And then the home team takes care of business in game 7. So by that logic, the series never started. I hate that comment. I hear it all the time. Well, the series doesn't start until you win a game on the road. The series doesn't start until you lose at home. What the hell are you talking about? Psychologically as well. If I'm an Edmonton Oiler right now, I'm sitting back saying to myself, we're down 0-2. There's no sugarcoating that. The series didn't start yet. The series doesn't start until we play at home. No, you're down 0-2. And conversely, Florida hasn't even played their A game yet. I just think it makes me cringe every time I hear that quote. Like, honestly, my skin flipping crawls. Jason said, damn it, Shauner, the neutral zone trap was boring. I need to displace my sadness over that series. People said it, right? And Scotty, the left wing lock, right? I thought the point was to win. I don't care how my damn team wins. If my damn team wins, you can call them the most boring, lucky team in the history of mankind. As long as you continue to call them Stanley Cup champions, we're cool. It's all good. Gordy said some corporate suit came up with that series doesn't start crap. I can't stand it, GW. Like, it's just dumb. You're not taking into account the psychology of it, too. I don't care what anybody says. Are you going to tell me right now every guy in that Edmonton locker room doesn't know they're down 0-2? Every guy in that Edmonton locker room doesn't know that a particular player on their blue line is struggling mightily? that you haven't seen Florida's A game yet? Get the hell out of here with that stuff. It drives me out of my mind. Brett said the game starts when the puck is dropped. Absolutely. 110%. Ray said they need to have Edmonton women next to Florida bench to get them off their game. You saw a little bit of that, right? Saw a little bit of that. So, all right, listen, you guys enjoy the game. We are going to be here Saturday again. It's going to be an extended version. We'll see what happens. I'm going to go on record. Todd was giving me some love. I am going to say 3-2 Florida tonight. How's that? 3-2. I nailed the first couple. I'm going to go 3-2 Florida tonight. I think they're ornery. I almost think the worst thing that could have happened for Edmonton, honestly, was to only get a minor on the Draisaitl hit. And Barkov's in, Tarasenko's in as well. They look pissed off. In case you're just joining us, I'm sure you guys saw it, but just in case you didn't, hearing Tkachuk saying, I have no comment on that, and Paul Maurice evoking Oprah Winfrey, it's not about my feelings, and their best players better keep their heads up. Again, I'm not saying it's going Bruise Brothers. I'm not saying that Joey and Proby are going to go out there and it's going to be hell's bells, Good Friday Massacre or anything. I think you're going to see a very engaged Panther team. First 10 minutes of this game should be a lot of fun. Enjoy it. We will talk. Actually, tomorrow we have Bad Yardage. Mike Fay and Jordan Young talking about the U.S. Open, and then we got the watch party. Caribbean jerk, pulled pork, and just some good Texas brisket. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Enjoy Game 3 tonight. See ya.
What the Puck, featuring Sean Belegian. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Matrazek. Executive produced by Sean Belegian and Todd Losey. Theme song and incidental music by Elliot Middleton. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated Podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe to What the Puck on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Got something to say to Sean? Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.